Pakistan and Afghanistan sign a ceasefire, but will it secure lasting peace? Calling it the first step in the right direction, both nations will meet again this weekend to take the process further. But how will Kabul and Islamabad rein in the extremist groups that sparked the conflict? And how much influence will foreign powers have? I'm Andrea Sankey, and this is the Newsmakers. Well, 2025 has been a deadly year for Pakistan, with attacks from both the Baluchistan Liberation Army and the Pakistan Taliban, or TTP, claiming hundreds of lives. Accusing Kabul of fostering the attackers, Pakistan launched a military assault on Afghanistan, to which the Taliban responded with force. Now, the escalation took place just after Taliban leaders met Indian officials in Delhi, stoking some Pakistani suspicion that Indian intelligence is working with the Taliban to undermine Islamabad. Still, with the help of Qatar and Turkey, a ceasefire was reached, but the groups Pakistan accuses of initiating the conflict were not included in the talks. So can the peace continue? And who's really responsible? Here's a look.
A brittle ceasefire hashed out in Qatar is putting an end to deadly clashes between Pakistan and Afghanistan. The neighbours, who share a more than 2,500-kilometre-long land border, have suffered deteriorating relations since the Taliban took over Afghanistan in 2021.
At last, we came to this conclusion that each country will respect the other, will not violate the other's rights, will not support hostile actions against the other, and no party or group will be allowed to harm the security of the other country or attack it.
So says Afghanistan's Defence Minister Mohammad Yaqub, speaking on the ceasefire after numerous incidents of deadly fighting in recent weeks. Pakistan's Defence Minister says Afghanistan must do more to stop the Tehrik-e-Taliban, or TTP group, from conducting incursions into Pakistan's territory from Afghan soil.
This was very clearly spelled out that there won't be any incursions, and TTP will not have any facility on their soil. We kept on repeating, and obviously they deny it, but in an implied way, both the countries, Turkey and Doha, Qatar, they pressed upon them that this is the main bone of contention.
Tehrik-e-Taliban is also known as the Pakistan Taliban, a military group with a goal to bring strict theocratic governance to Pakistan. Pakistan accuses Afghanistan's Taliban of harbouring TTP fighters. Despite their similar names, Afghanistan's ruling Taliban denies this and says the Pakistan Taliban are unconnected to them. Prior to the ceasefire, fatal weapons fire and clashes crisscrossed the border between the two nations. Afghanistan accused Pakistan of conducting a missile strike aimed at leaders of the TTP in the Afghan capital, Kabul. In return, Afghan soldiers descended on Pakistan border posts, firing on Pakistani troops, in which dozens of soldiers on both sides were killed. This prompted further responses by Pakistan, sending mortar shells and drones across the border. While Pakistan might be undergoing a deterioration of diplomatic relations with its neighbour to the west, India is increasingly reaching out to the Taliban in Kabul. Recent high-level meetings in New Delhi show a willingness between India and Afghanistan to work together in mining, trade, and commerce partnerships.
India is fully committed to the sovereignty, territorial integrity, and independence of Afghanistan. Closer cooperation between us contributes to your national development as well as regional stability and resilience.
India has also promised to boost its technical mission in Kabul to a full diplomatic mission, with Afghan diplomats setting up in New Delhi in return. A welcome boost for Afghanistan's ruling Taliban. So far, only Russia recognises the Taliban as the rightful Afghan government in Kabul. For now, an uneasy peace after weeks of deadly fighting descends upon the two neighbouring nations. But for Pakistan, seeing warming relations between India and Afghanistan, it's feeling increasingly hemmed in on both sides by unfriendly rivals.
So, with such a complex and often cynical relationship at play, can Afghanistan and Pakistan find lasting peace? Well, joining me now from Washington to debate that and more is Senior Director at the New Lines Institute, Kamran Bukhari. From Lahore, Pakistan, member of the Punjab Provincial Assembly, Usma Kardar. And from New Delhi, visiting research professor at the Institute of South Asian Studies at the National University of Singapore, Raja Mohan. Thanks all so much for being with me. Kamran, Pakistan was once accused of sheltering Afghan Taliban fighters. Now it's Afghanistan accused of sheltering Pakistan Taliban fighters. And in 2022, you wrote an opinion piece saying Pakistan and Afghanistan cannot coexist. I just need to start then by asking if that's still your firm opinion today, and if so, what is the point of these negotiations now?
Well, thank you for having me. Yes, I still firmly believe that because the underlying structural realities have not shifted. You have two competing versions of governance, or models of governance in two neighboring countries that basically claim that, hey, that we're both, Islamic political systems, and therefore one cannot accept the other. And so, as I wrote back in 2021 and then 2022, at some point, both the new Taliban emirate, reestablished in 2021 August, and the Pakistani state will fight with one another. And we're seeing that. We're seeing that intensify. As for the peace talks, I think they're meaningless. Ultimately, there is no compatibility. The imperatives on both sides deeply conflict.
Okay, so if these governments are in that perpetual state of conflict at the foundation, as you believe, why was Pakistan, in your opinion, ever supporting the Taliban? I mean, I remember in the fall, leading up to the fall of the Taliban, just a few years ago, it was Pakistan that said, no, this is a different organization now. They're going to allow elections, for example. Were they just deluding themselves, or was there something intentional behind that?
I think it was a strategic mistake. Look, all states seek strategic depth. This is natural. This is, since mankind has evolved into states, big or small, different regimes have sought strategic depth. The problem with the Pakistani approach was that they were seeking strategic depth through actors who do not recognize Pakistan's legitimacy, who challenge the narrative, who challenge the national identity, the entire political system. So this was a strategic blunder. Now, of course, back then, when this began, it was the era of the Cold War, and it was the fight against communism. And so that is the unintended consequence. What we're seeing right now is the unintended consequence of that decision. But I think it is a strategic blunder on the part of the Pakistani state to try and align itself with actors who ultimately would, once they achieve their goals in Afghanistan, would want to replicate them through their allies inside Pakistan.
Okay. Usma, is that what's happening here? Are past strategies and alliances, mostly in the form of Islamabad supporting the Taliban, coming back to haunt Pakistan now?
Thank you so much, Andrea, for having me. It's always a pleasure to be on your show. Andrea, Pakistan has always had a very long-standing relationship with Afghanistan, and we believe in having good, cordial relationships with all our neighboring countries for regional peace and stability and connectivity. It is important to keep links with everybody. We supported the Taliban because we felt that they had the mandate of the people of Afghanistan, and at that time, 70% of Afghanistan was under the control of the Taliban, and that is why we backed them. And you know, the whole world has seen that we hosted them for 4 decades. Even though Pakistan is not a signatory to the 1951 UN Refugee Convention, we still took care of all these Afghan refugees, admitted them on humanitarian grounds.
Okay,
Of,
but
you know,
refugees are
because
not combatants, and you would think that those refugees more reflected a lack of support for the Taliban in Afghanistan, the fact that they're fleeing the country.
well, this was, you see, and after the Cold War, this was happening. There was instability in the country, and we thought that once the Taliban came into power, then all these refugees would go back. And this is why we welcomed them and shared our resources with them. We also issued temporary registration cards to them. But somehow we have been seeing since 2021 till now that the Taliban have increasingly become a proxy of the Indian state. And that is something which is not acceptable. We've had multiple attacks which have been triggered from Afghan soil. And that is absolutely unacceptable to the state of Pakistan. In
Okay.
fact, if I may quote, there have been about 10,000 terrorist attacks, and the regrouping of TTP, the Taliban of Pakistan, who were absolutely weeded out from North Waziristan and South Waziristan, they are getting space on Afghan soil and in cahoots with RAW, the Afghan agency, which is there on the borders. They've got about 14 agencies. This
Okay.
is absolutely not acceptable.
Then let me ask Raja if that's true. Is Afghanistan, in a sense, a proxy state now of India used to undermine Islamabad?
It's very, very flattering to say India can run Taliban from Afghanistan. We don't have a border with Afghanistan, while Pakistan has a border of 2,500 kilometers. And Pakistan has been deeply, deeply involved with the Afghan affairs. They have their security interests. So to say India can play, against Pakistan in Afghanistan, I mean, it's, as I said, look, it's a compliment, but it's an unwarranted compliment because India cannot do, the kind of damage that Pakistanis would. It's an easy play to say, look, India's involved. In fact, Afghanistan was the only country that opposed Pakistan's entry into the United Nations. Afghanistan was willing to live with the British Raj's suzerainty, but it's not willing to do so, a suzerainty of Pakistan, which talks about strategic depth. Pakistan needs strategic depth, therefore it wants a pliable state in Afghanistan. Afghans insist on their territorial integrity and independence. To reconciling these two is going to be very hard. So it's for Pakistan to lose Afghanistan. There's not much India can do except some on the margins. We can do a little play, but we're not the main player in Afghanistan.
Okay, let me get Kamran's opinion then on this. I mean, is India playing a nefarious role here that it's obviously doesn't want to admit, or could India's only actual role in Afghanistan be for that of development, for example? It doesn't have a border. It just wants to make sure there's a stable neighbor in the region, and that's why there are these high-level meetings now.
Yes, as I was saying, look, I wouldn't use the word nefarious because it's sort of a pejorative term. But yes, look, it's in India's interest if India has a problem with Pakistan on their joint border, Pakistan, if India feels that Pakistan has been, and it's a matter of historical record that Pakistan has been backing militants in Kashmir. So it would make sense for India to back Baloch rebels, to support, to align itself with the new Afghan Taliban regime, which we've seen in the last few days with the foreign minister of the Taliban regime visiting India for 6 days. It would make sense for India to support the TTP. It doesn't require a border. These are intelligence operations. To what extent this is happening is opaque. But I can see the logic. I can see the rationale. And of course, look, but at the end of the day, I think that in this problem, India is a secondary player. The primary problem that Pakistan has is one of its own making. It's supporting the Afghan Taliban to come to power, not realizing that the Talibanization will not limit itself to west of the border. It will spill in to Pakistani areas. And that's what we've seen. And this is not new. This goes back to the early 2000s, if not the 90s. And so what we are seeing right now is that whole process metastasizing and going on steroids because of the comeback of the Taliban. In other words, the Pakistani Taliban rebels, the TTP, they're actually an extension of the Afghan Taliban movement and now the regime. So I think that is a problem that Pakistan has on its western flank. And yes, India can act as a spoiler to the extent that it can, but the problem basically is on the western flank. And I think that this is a problem that has not been emerged in a few years. This goes back multiple decades. So I foresee the Pakistanis struggling on their western flank for a long time to come.
Okay, Usma, is there any chance that Pakistan can get that under control, or has really the strategic blunders, I guess, of the past and the trust in the Taliban coming to power, because that's what the Afghan people, you believe the Afghan people wanted. Is there any real scope now for getting your border areas under control, stopping the attacks, and finding that lasting peace finally with Afghanistan?
Andrea, first, let me tell you the ground reality of India right now. They are actually licking their wounds because they have suffered a crushing defeat at the hands of Pakistan in Marka-e-Haq. So, they're so frustrated. They will try anything and everything to malign Pakistan, to work against Pakistan, to orchestrate terrorist attacks on Pakistan. They've been doing this for all along. So it is no wonder. I don't know why your guests can't understand that. Now, if you talk about peace between Pakistan and Afghanistan, I think Turkey and Qatar both have played a very positive role. They have become the guarantors. There has been a ceasefire. And Pakistan has made it very clear to the Afghanistan government that we can accept anything, but we will not accept any terrorism coming from Afghan soil into Pakistan. So if Pakistan is a nuclear state, but we are a peaceful country, and we do not believe in war or entangling with our neighbors. But if we are attacked, then we have the right to defend our borders, and we are very capable. The whole world has seen that we are highly capable of defending ourselves if there is aggression against Pakistan. So nobody should take Pakistan lightly anymore. We have a great standing army. We have a fantastic Air Force and Navy. We have the best intelligence agencies, which you can talk about. So if our countries want to live peacefully with us, and we want that, we are a peaceful nation, we want that, there is no such thing as strategic depth anymore. Maybe this was something which happened in the past, but now we want to have a good relationship. Now, for example, we are collaborating with Afghanistan on the polio front. I'm Chief Minister's focal person on polio, and Pakistan and Afghanistan are still grappling with polio. So we have these international team partners. We are working on both sides of the divide, and we are working together so that we can finish polio from both the countries.
Okay, let me just get to Raja, though, on the previous part of your answer, Usma, because Raja, for those who say that really India's involvement with Pakistan now is more about development, for example, why should India really care about the development of Afghanistan? I mean, the Taliban stands for everything that the BJP stands against and vice versa. So how is it in India's interest really to help strengthen such a regime if it's not in the interest of, building a bulwark against an enemy?
Look, I think Delhi hasn't done anything yet to strengthen the Taliban regime. It has just received the foreign minister of Afghanistan after prolonged, discussions over the last 4 years. Look, let me explain the paradox of how India-Pakistan relate to Afghanistan. Pakistan has the greatest external influence in Afghanistan, given open border, overlapping population, the Pashtun population, and the deep involvement of the Pakistan's agencies in the evolution of Afghan politics and security, starting with the Russian intervention, you had the American intervention. So Pakistan has a deep role in Afghanistan. India is, as Kamran said, look, we are a secondary player without a margin. We can play on the margins. So the paradox is this. Because Pakistan is a #1 player in Afghanistan, there's deep resentment against Pakistan's politics in Afghanistan. India does not have the border. India cannot do much. Therefore, we have a general goodwill in Afghanistan. And this is true of every single regime that has taken place, that has ruled Kabul since 1947. Every one of them has had a contradiction with Pakistan, and every one of them looked to India for some development, some diplomatic balancing, some political support. But there's no way India can offer security support for Afghanistan against Pakistan. So this is the contradiction. Pakistan is a neighbor. It has the greatest influence, and that's precisely its curse. India's benefit is it doesn't have a border. It can't do too much damage. It has the goodwill, so it can do bits of pieces on the margins to earn the goodwill, but it can't change the balance of forces within Afghanistan, which Pakistan can do. Here is Pakistan's problem. Pakistan can be a destroyer in Afghanistan. It can undermine any regime that has come to power. But unfortunately, as a rump state of the British Raj, it does not have the power to construct anything in Afghanistan. So that is a paradox Pakistan has to come to terms with, unfortunately. And they thought Taliban would solve that problem. But even Taliban does not recognize the Durand line. Even Taliban, which was so hostile to India when it was in power the first time around, looks to India for support. So I think that is the structure of geography. Anybody in Kabul has a problem with Rawalpindi, and anybody in Kabul has reasonable goodwill towards India.
Let me ask Kamran then final question. I mean, even if this piece is, I guess, incredibly superficial, especially hearing your analysis, how important is it for the region that it is somehow maintained? We're looking at China also getting involved, seeing if there can be kind of carrots introduced to stop any conflict from escalating. Where do you see the regional dynamics in that sense going?
So that's a great question. I mean, I think that in terms, what is the first order imperative of the Taliban regime? It's consolidating their regime, making sure that, their coming to power 4 years ago is not short term, that this regime is here to stay. That's their goal. But that requires financial resources that they do not have. And they're faced with international opprobrium. Nobody's willing to recognize that. And there's a whole lot of money in the current global environment that could potentially come to Afghanistan, assuming that the international community would want to engage the Taliban regime. And for that to happen, the Taliban regime has to change its behavior, which it is difficult for it to do. People cannot change, groups and regimes cannot change their nature on a fly. So the United States and the West is basically saying, hey, we gave up, we're done, we're not interested in what's happening. All we care about is that whatever happens in Afghanistan doesn't spill over into its broader strategic environment.
It's interesting.
Then there are...
sorry, Kamran, that you say, these regimes, like the Taliban, can't fundamentally change their nature. That's what's frustrating about understanding this, is because the Taliban wants to say that it is not connected to the TTP, that it somehow does not control them. I mean, how would that be even possible given their ideology?
I mean, these are not just ideological linkages. These are, think of the TTP as cousins and brothers of the Afghan Taliban. They have deep tribal linkages. There are ideological linkages. Definitely, there's the ethnic linkage. And let's face it, the TTP pledges allegiance to the supreme leader of the Taliban, Mullah Haibatullah. And before that, they pledged allegiance to his predecessors, going all the way back to the founder of the Taliban movement, Mullah Omar. And so,
Right. So would they
just
ever
sort of
throw
say
their family under the bus for political and diplomatic gains?
I don't see in what universe they'll do that. Because what that means is creating a problem internally and then basically telling these people that if they're going to rein them in, if they're going to control them, and they're going to say, you can't attack Pakistan, then what they're doing is basically saying, well, you know what, maybe there are other options, such as Daesh, the Islamic State of Khorasan province that's still out there. That organization would love to have these people join them and abandon the Taliban. That's not something that it's in the interest of the Taliban. They're struggling to create a political economy. The last thing they want are security issues internally in the country.
Okay.
So this is a constraint on the Taliban.
Right. Kamran, so unfortunately, we are completely out of time for this edition of the Newsmakers. I'd really like to thank all three of my panelists so much for being with us. Our viewers for joining us as well. Remember, you can follow us on social media and do be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm Andrea Sankey. We'll see you next time.